episode of Ask an Expert. We are joined here by Katherine McMahon, and I am so excited to jump into the topic of importing horses. But before we do so, Katherine, how's your day going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I'm just outside of Seattle, so we're starting to get that fall rain, but pretty typical.
Yeah, nice. I feel like my understanding of Seattle is it's raining like year round, but I feel like that is a very incorrect stereotype.
Very incorrect. We actually have extremely sunny summers and have to water everything because it doesn't rain in the summer.
Wow, the more you know. Very interesting. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here this evening. And I know you have been in the importing industry for a long time. So, kind of before we jump right into the questions that we've received, it would be great to hear from you kind of what your background is. Give us a bit of just a bit of your backstory to provide context for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and started riding hunter jumpers up there. We had a pretty decent show circuit growing up. Obviously, it was nothing like down in the States, but some of the girls did travel down to what is now Thermal, but used to be Indio, to compete in the winters. And I kind of had the I'll ride whatever, catch riding situation. You kind of made what you were given there as well. So I think it really taught me kind of to see potential in horses, or just working hard, or kind of just being able to ride any type of horse. And then I went off to Lake Erie College for equestrian studies, and really was like, kind of given a taste of what the girls had grown up, showing that maybe I didn't have the same situation, and started doing IHSA, and met a lot of great people that way. And actually met Nicole DeCourty Bush, who basically helped start our business. She was the first person to buy from us, and we were good friends in college. And then we've done business for 11 years now, and it's been great. And then I moved to Europe and was just riding over there. I had like a normal job, a non-horsey job. And one day I was riding a horse that I thought was a great hunter, and they are now doing more hunter classes in France, but at the time it was all just straight show jumping. And I was like, this is a great horse for the States. And they were like, yeah, we can't sell this here. And I was like, let me just make a couple phone calls. So that was kind of the short story of how everything got started in my background.
Wow. So that was that kind of realization. How long ago was that?
So that was 2013. And well, it was probably 2012 when I was riding in the fall. And then I didn't sell the horse till 2013. And I kind of started digging into, okay, I know people buy horses in Europe, but this was a period, I grew up, most of the people that even came to college, importing was never really a question. It was mostly, American bred horses. They might be European breeds, but you didn't hear a lot of people like, oh, I imported a horse. And so I knew people were buying from Germany and Holland, and not a lot of people from France. And never crossed my mind until I rode that horse and was like, wow, there's some hunter types here for not a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah, such a smart kind of realization that you had. So from that moment of kind of being like that light bulb moment, what happened from there? Tell us about the company that you started, is that your full-time, has that been your full-time job for the last 11 years? And kind of what does that business model look like?
Yeah. So I actually was a college professor for a long time while starting the business. And so the business kind of started out just very small, where I gave Nicole a phone call and I was like, hey, Nicole, I know you're starting your business. She was working as, I believe, an assistant trainer at the time. And then she had just started her own equestrian business. And so I was like, hey, do you want to like maybe come over and look at some horses? And so she was like, yeah, actually I have a person who wants to invest. And so I'm going to come over and check it out. And so she came over. I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever, but the owner of the barn was like, oh yeah, I'll drive you around and we'll just look at some horses. And I just have to laugh when I talk with Nicole about this, because one of the horses she bought, we literally showed up and it was like this backyard ring. And I don't even think it was maybe like a circle that was like 20 meters in diameter. There was one jump in the very middle. And I mean, they just popped this jump up to like meter 40, meter 45, and just jumped in the deepest footing I've ever seen. And Nicole was like, I want that one. And so she bought that one, and she ended up buying the hunter that I had been riding. And just by total happenstance, so I also didn't understand the process at all, and so I kind of had to ask some questions, and I had some help from the owner at the barn, and it was totally, thank goodness it was Nicole buying, because it was kind of, you know, a disaster the first time. But then my business partner, I met her at this, she was riding at the same barn, and we just happened to start talking one day, and she had received a grant from one of the universities, the business schools, to start her business of like selling horses. And she was like, yeah, I'm really interested. I studied abroad in Russia. I'm really looking at the Russian market. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about that, but I think there's probably some people that'll buy in the States. And so we kind of teamed up, and she was getting to know a lot of the breeders. And I was like, hey, do you want to just drive around and make some videos? And she's like, yeah. So, you know, this is like 2013, 2014. We have like one of those digital cameras, and we're like uploading the video to our computer and like trying to put it on YouTube. And it was just, I mean, it was really interesting. And we started posting on Facebook groups and just got some hits off of people. And we sold like a group of 5 horses in the beginning. And it was just to random riders in the US. And we don't come across these prices anymore, but it was like, you know, 5,000 euros or 4,000 euros for, you know, these like 4 and 5-year-old jumper types. And then one of those people was Melissa Rudershausen. She goes by Strasser now, she's married. And she is a Grand Prix amateur rider on the East Coast. And so she was like, hey, you guys should come to Florida and kind of see the scene here in Ocala. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll take a trip. And so through her, we were able to meet a lot more of the trainers, and then just kind of little by little, you know, word of mouth. And we definitely gave a lot of deals in the beginning, because we were just like, all right, we have the quality, we know our product's good, just buy from us and then tell your friends.
Got it. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And your business partner, what's her name?
Alizé Jeandon.
Okay, and so you're now based in Seattle. Is she based in France?
Yeah, she's based in St. Lo in Normandy. So when clients go over, they get to hang out with her and go around on horse tours. And she kind of scouts for me. So she goes to a lot of the horse shows, and she'll do kind of like the other side, dealing with the French side of things. And then I usually am the one that deals with the American side with the clients and the marketing and all that sort of stuff.
Got it. Okay. That is, that makes a lot of sense, that business model is like one of you is kind of in each location, like your point person. So that's really cool. And it, like, I feel like a lot of the most successful businesses, they start out in that really scrappy manner of like that you're describing, like, let's bring our old timey video camera and video these horses and just like hope for the best. And I think that's just like the coolest. I mean, that's a great story, and of how to really just like start a business and follow an idea. So that's really cool. Why would a client consider importing rather than buying in the American market?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, we have seen prices increase, but I think prices have kind of increased everywhere. So I think there's a lot more quality for less budget in France. And I know some people think that it's a big risk. And yeah, it is. I mean, you're shipping a horse across, you know, an ocean. But honestly, the young horse programs, and I can't speak for any of the other countries, so I'm going to only speak for French horses, but the young horse program is just so solid. Like, they take them, you know, some of them 3-year-olds will go and show where they do a little flat class with 4 horses, and then they jump a little line, and then they do a free jump, and they judge them on conformation as well. Not all 3-year-olds do that, but it's a great way to kind of introduce them to the horse show world. And then the 4-year-olds will jump up to meter 15 at regionals. They also get to jump a tiny little open water. And then 5-year-olds, it's up to meter 25. And then 6-year-olds is kind of where we see the huge difference, because there's a time class and a regular class. And that's where we kind of see who's going to make the cut to be a Grand Prix or meter 40 horse, and who's kind of, you know, maybe going to be an amateur horse or an equitation horse, or this and that. But each, level that these horses pass through, it's such an inviting opportunity in the sense that, for example, in the 4-year-old class, they start out the oxers with doing the first rail as a cross rail. So it's inviting, they're not nitpicking. Sometimes I wonder how these horses are actually ridden sometimes, because these riders are so good at just keeping a canter and keeping them straight. But, they might not have the best flat work. They're not drilling things into these 4 or 5-year-olds. They're just kind of like, all right, you just get this canter and we're going to jump around this course. And it's, they have such good experiences that they don't stop, they don't question it. And so it creates this mindset in these French bred horses that's just so awesome, and they're so willing, and they're extremely smart. I mean, I'm partial to that breed, the Selle Francais, obviously, but that's what we find, and it just sets them up basically for success. And then they let them go usually every year out in the fields for 2 or 3 months just to go be horses. So you never see that young horse burnout, or, the same sort of, they allow them to grow and be horses. So by the time you get, a 7 or 8-year-old for maybe an amateur rider, they're just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really smart model. And so with the cost of the horses, like the quality, you're going to get more quality for less money by buying over there. But once you include the shipping costs, does it end up still being less, or are you setting about the same amount you would in the US, but you're just getting a higher like maybe getting a higher, like what's kind of the difference in the overall spend?
Yeah, it's definitely still less money for sure. It's kind of a basic supply and demand thing. There's just a bigger supply. Their middle of the ground horse, I remember growing up and being like, wow, this horse jumps 3.6, and they're like, if that horse doesn't jump 3.6, there's a problem. Like they're 6-year-olds. Most of the horses go through the 6-year-old series, at least the 5-year-old series, which means they're jumping at least meter 25, probably meter 35. So that for them is like, normal horse should be at least doing meter 30. And which in the States, if you're jumping around meter 30 as an amateur, like you're doing well. So I think there's just better bred, higher quality. And for them, if the horse isn't jumping more than meter 30, they're like, well, we're going to sell it for cheaper, or if it's a young horse and it's a little slow and it's, maybe it's a 4 falter, or it jumps more like a hunter and it just wants to do the gap. And those are the types of horses that we really try and pick up to sell, because we know that you can negotiate harder on those ones versus, the top young horse that won the 6-year-old final that's going to go on and be a really nice Grand Prix horse,
Right. And is your business 100% focused on the hunter jumper market?
We also sell equitation horses, but it kind of really depends. I think we sell a lot more to amateurs. We don't sell a lot of young jumpers. That's not an easy market, because you have to keep that horse for a while before, the value of resale or it being a Grand Prix horse, and the amount of money that goes in the US, it's not a very profitable situation. So it has to be something really special for a trainer to buy. So oftentimes we see, amateurs buying horses, or trainers buying resale horses, or, hunters, or young eq prospects, or older horses that are stepping down that can go and do the equitation.
Got it. And you're focused on the French market. Have you considered like expanding to the other European country markets, and kind of what's your thought on the difference of the product that you're going to get by importing a horse from France versus Germany versus like you name it?
Yeah. I don't think we'll ever expand. Maybe I have some connections in Holland just for maybe getting some more hunters. But one thing that we pride ourselves on, our company, is we know the product, we know the horses, we know the breeders, we know the riders. So I know that people are not going to buy a situation that they're going to be upset with. Versus I don't really know the other people in other countries, so I wouldn't feel comfortable selling from someone, versus like Alizé is on the ground seeing the horses, in person. So we know what to expect. And, you hear horror stories of imports from other countries. And I'm not saying that France doesn't have that, but the people that we work with, that isn't an issue. So, you know, I think also that, and this is completely my opinion, and I could totally be wrong on this, but in Germany, they are really structured in their training, and French people, you know, are kind of that laissez-faire sort of situation. So I always tell clients, you know, this is the worst you'll ever see the horse because maybe he doesn't have flat work, or maybe, you know, he doesn't have totally a change but I guarantee that rider has never asked him for a change. You know, some of the riders, we've trained some of them to get better about making videos or doing something, some of the things with their horses. But I mean, for them, they're riding, you know, 15 horses a day. So they can't sit there and be like, I'm going to train this horse to do this. It's like they're in and out. They want it to go clean. So there's always room for improvement. Whereas I've found in Germany, they're really good at producing a super quality horse. And sometimes that's the best the horse is ever going to be, is when it's presented to a client, because it has, you know, a nice tall German man on it, and it's, you know, pushing it into the bridle and making it perfect. And, you know, we see, because a lot of our clients are female, they ride a little bit lighter. They might ride with, you know, less in a frame and have the horse going more forward. And I think French horses like to be ridden like that a lot more, is my personal opinion. And we have heard, and again, this is just, again, my opinion, but that the German horses, sometimes you need to repeat everything, the same thing every single day continuously. And with French horses, it's not the case. I don't think they're quite as, they're a little bit more intelligent and will think more for themselves. And they tend to be less spooky, in my opinion, and not silly about things, because they're just given a situation where they have to figure it out sometimes on their own.
Yeah, it's I had not thought about that, but it and I like, yeah, this is just conjecture, but I think it makes sense. Like it is, there's like rationale to that does definitely make sense. And I can imagine that it does create a different personality for the horses to be in a program that's a little more like, I don't know, a little less structured. And for a lot of people that for a lot of amateurs, that's a really good type of horse to get, because I mean, a lot of amateurs, they're not looking for like a super regimented horse. They just want to go out and have fun and continue to get better. So, it's a really valuable perspective and a super interesting conclusion that you've drawn there. Okay, so for someone new to the idea of importing a horse from Europe, what are kind of the first steps that you recommend that they take?
I mean, we have a document that we share with like our clients or prospective clients, and it's with all of the horses that we have at that moment that we found that are for sale. I mean, there's always more. You walk in a barn and everything kind of technically can be for sale, but so we share that. Like, so for example, if the client is like, okay, I have, you know, a budget of 45,000 with import, I need to find a 1.10 jumper, or, you know, someone wants a 4-year-old hunter prospect or whatever, we'll say, okay, here's what we have that we've seen so far. Tell us what you like. And then, are you coming over? Are you buying off of video? For a lot of people, especially first-time buyers, I mean, we have had first-time buyers just buy off of video, and, you know, we've tried to make it a super comfortable process for them. But we do recommend that if people can, you know, afford it and have the time to come over and sit on them, because that's a whole experience in itself, is to see, you know, what French barns are like and where your horse is coming from and that sort of thing. But I think just initially coming to us with what you want and your budget, and then from there we can start to talk about it and show examples and show horses for sale.
What's a reasonable estimate for what it costs to import a horse, just like the shipping from France?
Yeah, so JFK is definitely the cheapest to ship into. And that's probably for a gelding at this point, maybe 11,000. I would have to double check on everything, but it's probably between 10 and 12. We try and group horses together to save money on the transport to Amsterdam. So oftentimes we'll be like, hey, if you're not super pressed to get your horse immediately, we'll try and group it with others. We have shipping, and that'll save you on that, you know, transport. And then when the horse is stateside, if someone can pick it up at JFK, that's obviously, better for them financially. But if not, we'll try and group it on, a shipload with other horses and that sort of thing. But Miami and LA run a bit higher. Chicago, we've shipped into very rarely because it is more expensive and it's harder to find horses for that flight. So oftentimes if we sell quite a bit to Ohio, we'll just ship through JFK.
Got it.
And then if it's mares, that's the other problem, is mares have to go do an extra quarantine. So they run about 3,000 to 5,000 more. California has a lot higher prices for mares than the East Coast. There's quite a few CEM quarantines on the East Coast for mares, and in California there's just a couple, and so they've gone up in price. I mean, it's like, I think like 15 to 16 now to bring a mare in, if not more, to California. So it's really something that people need to think about when they do have their budget. Is we also use it as a negotiation factor. And as for stallions, we just recommend, unless you're going to be breeding or you want to keep it a stallion for performance purposes, just geld it.
Yeah. When it comes, like, your clients are the buyers, but your clients are also, in a sense, the breeders. Or I guess, who do you consider your client? Do you consider it the buyers, or yeah? Start there.
Yeah, I would say we probably consider it more the buyers, versus we always refer to them as buyers and sellers. We're kind of like that real estate agent, but for horses, where we're connecting people. And for the sellers, we do things like make videos for the horses, but we also do ask them to make the video and send it to us and send us a description and give us the details and take this photo, do that. And versus like we're catering towards the buyer on the American side, and asking the seller to provide, X, Y, and Z.
Got it. So does the broker fee, is that paid by the seller or the buyer?
It's paid by the buyer. And we've just always done it that way because it just ends up, we are doing the work for the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the breeders that you work with, is any part of like the negotiation, are they at all incentivized to want to get their horses to the US? Because once the name is now like in the ring and part of kind of the market here,
Yeah.
they will hopefully have more business. So is that part of the equation there?
I think for some, especially because in the horse's name, a French horse's name, the end of the name, the very last word is the breeder. So, kind of like a VDL situation. So we know, I can watch a horse go and be like, oh, it's from that breeder, like I immediately know. And I think for some breeders, they do take pride in like, oh, I've sold, X amount of horses stateside and they've performed this way, That's kind of a boost for them, and maybe a little bit of an ego boost. But the problem is too that there is a huge cultural difference between Americans and the French. For the French, they have amazing food, they have amazing art, they have all of this. So they're not always I kind of want to say the most incentivized to sell their horses for a lower price. Because there's a bit of a pride factor for them, versus American are like, okay, how can I get the best product for the cheapest price? And French people, it's like, they might want to tell you the story of their breeding farm for 100 years and you have to have a coffee for 20 minutes and, this and that and that. And it's kind of nice because Alizé is able to cushion a lot of our negotiations that happen, because Americans can be like, I'm going to offer this crazy price. And then you're like, okay, well, we're not going to exactly do that. But, so I think some of the sellers we work with have seen the results of reducing prices and, I don't know, that the hawk has, OCD or whatever, let's drop the price, the person will still buy it. Versus some of the people that are more difficult to work with who are unwilling to budge on certain things. And I think that's just a cultural factor. We have a much more entrepreneurial mindset in the United States and a much more like, how are we going to get this deal done? Versus for them, there's a lot of pride involved.
Yeah. Yeah. The cultural difference is so real. Yeah. I think it's that that seems like that checks out. Even just like traveling in France or broader Europe, it like you do feel that like it's just a total different approach to life and work and whatnot. So um that all makes perfect sense and it's really interesting. Do clients usually come to you by themselves, or do you recommend they come with a trainer?
So we really recommend that clients come with a trainer. We have had clients come over that don't, but it is much easier for, I think it's depending on if the level of that amateur rider, if they are, a meter jumper or someone that's a little more timid, or it's better to have their coach with them who is able to say, hey, let's jump this, let's do it this way, it's just like home, sort of thing, versus someone who comes over and they don't have that trainer and it's a new experience. The horses, they do ride like a horse, but they ride a little different sometimes, depending on how that rider's ridden them. Sometimes they're a little hotter, sometimes, they're not prepped, maybe they didn't get lunged, so it is easier for us to deal with a trainer coming over. That's not to say that people can't come on their own. We've definitely had that, like I've said. But it is easier to deal with a trainer. And I think it's also that way the trainer can talk to the vet and there's just more confidence in the whole deal for everybody.
Yeah. How much are you guys like opining on the fit? Like I know, like when you're like trying on clothes and the person in the dressing room is like, that looks great, that looks great, that looks great. Like, are you guys kind of like, oh, you look like a great fit on all the horses, or are you like, this one's not like, I don't like this one for you? Like, and are you like, check out the confirmation? Like, I like raising red flags. Is that part of your role to like be pointing these things out, or do you guys try to let them like drive the ship?
Yeah, I mean, if the trainer's there, we might not say a lot, but if they start asking our opinions, we'll say, yeah, I don't think this is, or this breeding, sometimes these horses from this stallion can act like this, just a heads up. Or we see them on something, we're like, this is the horse for you, like this is going to make such a nice hunter. And I hope that those trainers do take our opinion, because we've sold almost, I think, 600 horses now, and we know what the horses are over there, and we can see the potential a lot better maybe than certain people. And so I think it is good to also ask us what our feelings are. And it's funny, I just in May sold a horse to one of my college friends, and she finally was out of vet school, ready to buy her next jumper, and she hadn't had a horse in a long time. And so she didn't come over, but I went over and I was trying horses for her with and a couple other clients came over as well to buy other stuff. And so she was really like, oh, I just love this like 5-year-old that you rode. And I'm like, no, you need to buy this other horse. Like I like had a huge discussion with her, and I was like, just trust me, you do not want a 5-year-old. This is like a 5-year-old hunter also. And she was kind of stuck on that idea, but finally she did buy the other horse, and I was like, I promise you this is your horse. And she is just over the moon, because I knew that that's what she wanted. And I tried the horses for her and stuff, and everyone, he's a barn favorite and this and that. So I really think that people have to understand that we've been doing it for so long that we know. And just even by seeing someone ride, a video of them riding or something like that, we can tell like this is going to work or this isn't going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be intimidating too. I mean, even for, I'm sure some of the coaches that you're working with, I mean, definitely the clients who don't come with coaches, but even with the coaches, sometimes it's, I think, like, could it be their first time ever going to France and helping a client importing horses? In those cases, kind of what are your recommendations for like the right questions to ask or the right structure to have? I know one thing I've heard just like since starting Ride IQ from a couple experts is just like ask to go into the barn and see them being tacked up and like really be a part of that, like be a part of the whole process of getting them out, because the tacking up process, like if something goes wrong or they're like not cool in their stall, like maybe you don't even want to get on that horse, like maybe save everybody the time, save the horse the effort. What are things like that that are like your recommended kind of approach to horse shopping?
Yeah, I mean, I think France is usually pretty good that they'll wait to finish. Either the horse is not even tacked up and you show up and you're like, "Hey, who's tacking this?" I'm calling people. I'm like, "Who's here?" Like, which then you just wander around the barn. You get to see everything, which sometimes clients like. I will have to say again, like the laissez-faire like attitude in France is strong. So you won't have anything super prepped. And yeah, just getting that opportunity to see the horses tacked up or where they live. I mean, French people love to talk about their barns or even show you other horses or show you, this horse that they bred or something. Sometimes we go and look at the babies and we get to see like the half sister of the horse you just rode or whatever. So it's like, it's a whole experience. I mean, I haven't really ever horse shopped in Germany or Holland, so I can't say what the experience is like. Sometimes we do like kind of like a gathering of horses where we'll bring in multiple horses for people to try, which is easier so we don't have to drive around all the barns. And in that situation, just going and watching the horse get out of the trailer and then tied and tacked up. I will say that the French people are really honest for the most part about anything. Like we were trying a horse and they said, "Oh yeah, this is the one we put the saddle pad over its head to get the bridle on." And we're like, "Wait, I think you need to explain that more." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, she's doing so much better. We used to not even be able to get the bridle on." And he's like, "Oh, if you just put it over her ears, then you're fine." And we were like, "Well, that's kind of hard for us to sell unless it's like the best horse in the world." So they're like not even trying to hide it a lot of times. And I think it's important clients ask questions like, um, how is it in the trailer or something like that. I mean, for the most part, French horses don't have an option but to be good in situations because they're taking 10 horses to the show, so that horse better get on the trailer. And also it's law in France that if they sell to an amateur and the horse does have a vice and they didn't disclose that they have to give them their money back. So there are laws and protection. So you could do situations legally. And I think because of that, it keeps the French sellers from hiding anything. I know clients are pretty worried about drugging because that is pretty prevalent in the United States. The French don't do that. If anything, the horse needs injections. So there's probably maybe 2 people in all of the horses we've sold that have actually drug tested. And because we're just like, it's honestly not worth paying for it because the horse, it's not going to be drugged. They're not, trying to do anything. They're not making a hunter. They don't have the time or energy to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. It's better for everybody. It's better for the horse. It's like for all these things to just be disclosed, like it's just a better outcome for everybody. So I'm a huge proponent of that. So that's great to hear. Um, what are some of the key logistical challenges involved in importing horses and how do you handle them?
Yeah, so the horse has to be negative for pyroplasmosis, and my business partner and I were just talking last week, and it's a tick-borne disease, and more horses are testing positive for it. Unfortunately, I don't know about other countries, but for France, it has to do with the fact that the ticks are moving farther north now that are positive. And my understanding is they're really working on getting a vaccine for it because it's really impacting not just our business, but the entire, I mean, racehorses, everything. It's impacting the entire equestrian business at this point. And so it's come to the forefront of a huge problem for France, and they're really trying to figure out a way to take care of that. And so logistically, we always tell clients, just do the pyro test before you do anything else, because I know some people are like, "Oh, well, I want to get the vetting and I want to do," and we're like, no, like just, you don't want to spend the money on a vetting and then you can't even import your horse. But there are ways to treat pyro. It depends on the levels in the horse, and if they're low enough, you can you can give them a medication over a period of time. And we have seen some horses become negative. But if the titers are too high, then you can't treat it, and that horse just has to be sold within Europe. So I'm curious also what we'll see in the future as far as if there's going to be vaccine or if the United States is going to become more lenient. I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I hope there's a vaccine. This would be the ideal situation. And then we have a shipper and we have quarantine agents. So I don't personally do any of the paperwork or anything like that. I'm just like, all right, there's flights, when do you need the horse by? When can we ship? And I talk to the shipper and, there's a spot on this flight. Does this work for you? And that sort of situation. And then the quarantine agents will take care of all of the paperwork, obviously, when the horse is landed and then transport to the barn. So we make sure that we're in connection through that whole process and we're checking in on everything. But once the horse is paid for, we kind of take a step back a little bit and let the shipper and the quarantine agent really step in for their role.
Okay. And is the rule related to the illness, is that a US, like the US is the one who requires it to be negative, or France requires it to be negative?
US. So it's horses can be positive in France. And it's a real problem. We also, if the titers are slightly marginal for testing positive in France, we recommend not even buying the horse, because we've seen horses come over, not us, but I've seen other horses or horses that have come over with our horses that have been tested positive and had to be sent back. And then it requires that everyone else that was on that load with that horse has to get re-quarantined.
No.
So it's a nightmare.
Oh my gosh.
It's just safer just to not deal with it and pick a different horse. But like I said, I'm really, really hoping, like, fingers crossed, that a vaccine comes out, and then, because it's the same thing in Germany and everywhere the horse has to be negative. But again, I don't know the frequency of, positive tests in these other countries because I haven't been following that. But as far as France, I don't know what the percentage of increase, but we've definitely seen a huge increase in the horses we've tested every year, even from last year.
Wow. Are there any other legal or veterinary requirements that buyers should be aware of when importing?
We leave it to the buyer to decide what they want to do for the vetting. They usually ask their vet and do a set of x-rays. And I think something that's really important for people to realize is in France, a horse is evaluated on the level that it's doing and the level that you plan to do with that horse. So for example, if it's a 1.25 meter horse and it's going to go jump a meter, it's evaluated in that situation and that vetting by the French vet for that job. And we are seeing more and more that people are really scared of, certain things that are coming up in vettings that have always been there. And now that we're x-raying the back, we never used to x-ray the back. So now we're seeing all these things in the back and people are like, oh my gosh, okay, every horse has kissing spine now.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of the instances of kissing spine are an issue, but I think we've hit this point, and I have talked to people in the US as well. It's kind of a whole situation happening everywhere where horses are just not passing the vet, but that doesn't really mean that they're not passing. Like, they're still serviceably sound in my opinion. So I think something that people need to understand when purchasing is that, we used to buy horses all the time with 14 x-rays, and now it's like people are doing 45 to 60 x-rays. And of course, you can find everything wrong with horse, versus trainers we really enjoy working with are ones that really focus more on the lameness tests. And they're like, is that horse sound? Does it are its tendons good? Is it performing the job that it needs to perform while staying sound? Versus like, okay, well, let me WebMD this and give you a list of, 400 illnesses that this horse might have in the future. So I think coming in with that mindset and also having a relationship with the vet is really important, and being able to ask those questions. And it is difficult for resale. Like, we do have a lot of trainers that buy for resale. And in that situation, I do understand that you do want something with good x-rays, because that someone will negotiate down. But again, I also think it's all about the horse's performance later. If you buy a really nice hunter prospect and it's going out and it's winning, and maybe it has some slight changes in the navicular, or it has, a spur, or it has a chip that doesn't affect it and you don't have to take it out. Performance says a lot more, I think, sometimes than x-rays themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's true of buying horses anywhere. It's weighing the kind of risk reward of various different ailments. But I do understand that, like, when you're importing it, everyone is taking into account, like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this money on bringing it over and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a little bit, it feels like there's more stakes involved, even if they're
Totally.
spending less money versus buying it down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Once the horse arrives at home, or at the new home, do you guys help at all, or is there any sort of support with acclimation of getting the horse kind of comfortable in their new environment?
Yeah, I know some people will, maybe focus more on electrolytes or certain supplements after a horse has traveled. For the most part, I think geldings tend to do better than mares, because the mares do have the extra quarantine, and so sometimes they can be a little bit more stressed, or maybe they're not, in their normal program, and they do need like a little bit extra, love and care. So I think just being aware, we will. Some people will ask to know, what was the horse eating in France? What was its diet? What was its turnout schedule? What was its normal work routine? How many times a week did it jump? It's that, what kind of bit did it go in? And that, I think, helps for a lot of people, especially who haven't imported. And then some people who've imported all the time, they just throw the horse in their program and it's just fine. I mean, horses are pretty adaptable, especially ones that come from France, because they just, it's kind of their style over there. But yeah, I think just being aware and of what the horse needs, and maybe those first couple of weeks giving a little extra attention, or if it's an amateur rider, maybe lunging it a bit more on the safe side, or just getting the horse used to. But honestly, for the most part, the horses go over and they're just fine. The only thing they all do is, a lot of the paddocks in the States have a lot smaller fences, and they just love to jump out all the time. So I'll get these text messages like, well, so-and-so jumped out last night and I found him in the yard in the morning. I'm like, yep, that happens all the time.
Wow. How much taller are their fences over there?
I mean, they're pretty high. And we actually
Wow.
saw one of the babies. We were at a farm trying horses, and I think it was a 3-year-old. And I mean, this fence was huge, and it jumped out onto the pavement and ran
Was it
away.
okay?
Yeah, it was totally fine. And we're just sitting there. It was in one of those like free jumping with the fence really, really high. I mean, we're talking like 6 feet, and it didn't even run. It like just jumped it. And we're all just like, oh my goodness. Like,
You're like, is that one for sale?
yeah, I was like, what about that one? Yeah, but I think a lot of the barns in Ocala, they have those smaller paddocks that are, even the ones you see at hits, they're like, what, 4 feet maybe or something. And yeah, the French horses are just like, okay, see you later, I'm jumping out. Like,
it's fair. I haven't questioned it, but all of our horses are capable of jumping higher than that, but they, for some reason, respect the fence.
Yeah.
What's like some advice that you give to people who are purchasing the horse without going over there? Like, what are some things that they can do to feel confident that they're making the right decision?
Yeah. We definitely try to make as many videos as they ask for, like whatever makes them comfortable. If they want to see a video of it going in the trailer, done, we'll ask for that. If they want to see a video of it, I don't know, walking through a hallway or so, like we've had some weird requests before, or how it's in the stall, like, take a 2-minute video of it eating its hay, just to get an idea of like personality and the way the horse is. That's definitely, for some people, they need that. A lot of times too, some of the people that buy a video are trainers we know, and we'll just see the horse and we're like, this is your type, like buy it, and we have confidence in what they like. and we know what they like. And so we have confidence that that horse is a good fit for that typical trainer, or that, you know, a resale for this person or whatever. So I think that helps too. But first time buyers, it's just definitely just making them feel really comfortable with doing a million different videos if they need that, or, you know, jumping a weird jump or putting a Liverpool or something like that, you know, just to see all of the scenarios of what they're getting into.
Yeah. Do you guys have any sort of policy in place for what happens if it isn't a good fit or the horse isn't as described? Like it comes over here and it's like, this is not what I was expecting. Is there like a guarantee or a buyback policy or a way to help kind of work out those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we really stand behind our product. So this is like a 1% chance that this happens. You know, I mean, we have had people that were like, that trainers were like, it didn't work out for that kid. But in those situations, I would say all of these horses are resale. So if it doesn't work out for that one person, you can probably sell it to someone else and it will be a perfect horse for them. We've never had situations where, like I said, I think it really keeps the buyers safe because there are laws in place in France to keep amateur buyers safe from horses that have vices or things like that. And so we don't, you know, we don't sell a horse and then all of a sudden it starts cribbing and we're like, wait, that was it didn't do it in France.
Yeah.
We did have one situation actually, that horse we bought, Alizé and I bought, and we didn't know it was a weaver. And because it had never been in a stall where it could stick its head out. And so we put it somewhere, you know, after we'd already bought it and had it, and we just happened to put it in another stall and we're like, oh my God. And we were able actually to give it back because
Wow.
that was illegal what they did, and they didn't represent that the horse was a weaver. So again, I think that that really keeps, you know, the clients. And if there is a situation, we'll do the best we can to get that horse sold from them. I think like I said, every horse that we sell, I think can always be a resale because they are so nice that we'll be like, oh, absolutely. We'll market it for you. We'll talk to some people. Why don't you send it on trial here? Why don't you, you know, send it to this trainer? So we're always willing to help if it doesn't work out. But honestly, we're pretty good at matching the buyer with the right horse. So I feel pretty confident in being like, yes, you will love this horse. It won't be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. How has the demand for imported sport horses evolved over the years? And are there any current trends you've noted in the types of horses buyers are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's increased. A lot more people are open to importing now. It's funny because I also feel like there's different pockets where people have the money, so they may not want to like have a deal and they want to sit on it. So it's interesting. We'll be like Northern California and Southern California, in my opinion. Northern California loves to import. Southern California, you just need to import the horse and sell it there. Like people just don't want to buy imports as much as Northern California. So I think that's kind of like we see different trends of places where people are willing to import or versus they just want something to import. Because we do buy our own resale horses. We have about 5 usually at a time. And we'll place them in different parts of the US that we're like, oh, this is an Ohio horse, or this is a Texas horse, or this is a California hunter, or like, you know, because we can tell based off the markets, they're all different, you know, in the United States, even price point, you know, a Wellington hunter is not looking the same as maybe like a Northern California hunter, you know? And I think trend wise, the biggest thing I've seen is going back to horses passing the vet. And I think people are being a lot more cautious. And we have heard that in a lot of situations, not just the market in France, but the market as well in the United States, is people are kind of maybe wanting to lease more, or, you know, maybe not wanting to spend as much money, or, you know, I think there's just a huge kind of caution towards these x-rays that we're seeing, because now we're x-raying, like I said, the back. And it used to be everyone was obsessed with naviculars, and now it's a kissing spine situation. And so there are different trends. And as far as the type of horse, I would say that hasn't really changed. A lot of people just want the amateur jumpers. Everybody wants a hunter, but hunters are getting harder and harder to find because you want the hack winner, you want that it's jumping a 10, and that's a bit harder to find sometimes. So I think, yeah, the trend of just a good amateur horse, a good meter 25 horse that's a gelding is just going to sell all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does kind of the competition within like the horse importing brokerage industry work? Like, are there, when you're bringing a client over and representing them, are there a lot of other brokers who are going to look at the same horses? And are you guys kind of like, is that part of the equation where you're like, hey, if you're interested in this horse, you have to come here in the next 2 weeks because like it's kind of like I'm picturing like buying a house. Like you're all kind of like it's like put your offer in today, otherwise it's gonna be gone tomorrow for like the really popular ones. It's like how does that all work?
If it's a nice hunter, you better believe that I am calling everyone at the same time and like, okay, who wants this one? Because it's hard to find those. But some of the other horses will stick around longer. It depends. So we do tell people when they're coming over, we're like, okay, you have our list, but they might be like, oh, I'm coming over in 3 months. And we're like, this might all change. So be flexible. Yeah, maybe some of these horses are still going to be for sale, but some of them are probably going to get sold. So we'll check in like 2 weeks before you come. And for the most part, if we schedule that, a week or two before, those horses aren't going to sell. Because the seller will be like, all right, I have someone coming to look at it. I'm going to allow that person to look at it first versus, selling it out from under us. Cause it's the moral thing to do,
Yeah, totally.
and also, we work with these sellers all the time. So they don't want to make us upset by doing things like that. It's a symbiotic relationship between the two of us. So they're usually pretty good about that. But yeah, I mean, I think if it's a really nice horse and the price point is less than 50 grand, people will buy it off video. If it's like, a really nice hunter prospect or an awesome amateur jumper, and we just send a video to like all of our contacts, someone's going to be like, yeah, done. I'm putting an offer in. Or like a nice equitation horse, just because it's worth it and it's worth the risk. And especially when they hear that other people are bidding, then it's like, kind of, we've seen some trainer wars on horses before. And so that's always interesting. But I think for the most part, it's not, the market isn't as crazy as like these auctions or anything like that. I mean, horses will get sold or, not get sold, but it's not like this, people are bidding and overbidding and that sort of thing.
Is part of the conversation with these French sellers, like, I know like whenever I've sold a horse, I've really like a big part of the conversation has been like, what do you plan to do with this horse? Like, what's your program like? How are you going to treat it? Like really kind of like background checking the person who's buying them Absolutely. To make sure like this is going to be a great home. Is that part of the conversation that is that a priority for the French sellers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person. Some of them sell so many horses that they're just like, okay, great. I know he'll have a great home in the United States. And some people are like, it was their second horse they bred, or it was, the one horse they bred, or it was such a special horse to them that they do, and they want to know, and they'll follow, on Instagram, the person, or they'll ask questions, or we'll send updates, especially if I'm at a horse show and I see the horse and I'm like, oh my gosh, this horse is here, and I'll contact the breeder or something. But again, I think it depends on the person. I would say the majority of breeders in France breed so many that they're just like, okay, great, another one is sold, but then the smaller breeders are the ones that we really do see care. We've had breeders come over and visit their horses and their new owners in the United States, and I think for them it's an important, product that they made and the relationship they had with the horse. And so for them, it's something special. But like I said, I think the majority of them, it's, they have 10 4-year-old horses. So they're like, we got to get these horses out and sold.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is well, I can't believe we're already here on the hour. I just looked at the clock and was like, oh my gosh, we've already been talking for an hour. How is this possible? This has been so immensely informative though. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about how all of this works. Before I let you go, how does somebody who is a good client for you? Like what does that look like? And how do they get in contact with you? Are you taking more clients? How does that all work?
Yeah, we're always happy to sell and have new clients. We're in the process of updating our website, so don't look at the website. I mean, you can, but it has all our contact info. But it's the horses that are on there out of date. We're doing a reboot on that. But our Instagram and phone numbers, emails, it's all. If you just Google us, you can find it all. And yeah, a good client for us is usually a trainer that is a repeat. So, they'll come over with their clients. And like Nicole DeCourty Bush with DeCourty Bush Equestrian, she's bought almost all of her horses for her clients from us. And so she buys quite a few every year. And yeah, we work a lot with Daniel Geithner too, buys a lot with us. And it's just they know what they want. We know their style. It's easy to work with. We know what their vet's gonna say. And it's just an easier relationship. And clients that also new clients or amateur one-time buyers, that's fine too. We love those as well. But someone that's open to listening to what we have to say, because we will reassure people like, listen, this is our opinion, we've got you, this is the process, we do this all the time, don't worry, ask all your questions. You're never going to sound silly, but and trusting us. I think when someone comes in and they're waiting for that, like, shifty behavior, or they're waiting for something, sometimes things happen. Like it's just part of the process. We had the blood got lost on the way to the lab. Sometimes that happens, and then people are like, oh, well, that was what happened. They think there's some sort of trick. There's no, we're not trying to trick you here. We've been doing this for so long. It's just kind of coming in with patience and flexibility, because it isn't America, it's France. And sometimes things do take a lot longer, especially if it's like August and everyone's on vacation. But like, it's just kind of part of the process. It's a whole experience. So coming in with an open mind and willing to listen, to our opinions, as well as being able to voice what you want, I think is the best way to kind of come into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really great mindset to have. What is your guys' Instagram handle?
It is French Horse Exports, just our name all together as one. And same thing, our website will just be, currently is www.frenchhorseexports.com, and then we'll shift it over to the new one. It'll be the same domain name. And then you can find all of our, contact WhatsApp. We use WhatsApp a lot. I think more and more people are using that as well, but it's the best way for clients to contact us and send videos and that sort of thing. But yeah, we have a Facebook as well, but I think everyone's more on Instagram these days.
Yeah, I know. I mean, except for the equestrian industry, I feel like they're holding on strong to Facebook.
Oh my gosh. I literally, I love it when I go. California, not so much. People are on the Gmail, but I'll go and look up these trainers' emails on the East Coast, and it's AOL.com. And I'm like, how does anyone still have AOL? I didn't even know that was still a thing.
I think you have to pay for it now. I think if you're on AOL, it's not free. So
yeah, I always have to laugh, or I will say, when everyone talks about the equestrian industry, the amount of websites that are not up to date, or just are just interesting to look at, we'll put it that way. It's such a word of mouth industry. I think that's not where the priorities are, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
And it's funny to see how that's,
evolving.
How that stayed the same. It hasn't evolved.
How it's not evolving. Yeah, it's actually funny. When we first started, this is like our 160th episode of Ask an Expert. But when we for the first 100 or so episodes, at the beginning of the episode, me or Jessa would say the person's bio. And I would say like 80% of the time with people that we weren't like super familiar with, the bio would be wrong. And they'd be like, oh no, like that's actually old. Or like, and we're like, well, that's because all the information about you online is 10 years old. So now we've stopped doing the bios and the intro. We're like, can you just tell us about yourself? Give us your bio.
Exactly.
Well, I've now taken us on this major tangent, but Katherine,
okay.
thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was super fun. And everybody, thank you so much for submitting questions. Those were really useful. And I learned a lot. So Katherine, thank you. Thank you again and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.